My name is Dennis Garrity, and I'm the former Director General of the World Agroforestry Center here in Nairobi, Kenya. The center is the world leader in research and development on the role of trees in farming systems. Over the last few years, I also have been serving as the United Nations Convention on Desertification ambassador for the drylands, and have been maintaining a profile of the problems and solutions that are so necessary to actually improve the lives and livelihoods of people around the world in the drylands of the globe. The drylands are, in fact, the areas where most poverty occurs in Africa, and therefore we've been putting so much emphasis on the kinds of technologies, practices, systems of agroforestry that farmers could use in order to be able to improve their lives and to adapt to the effects of climate change, which have been proven now to be in Africa already occurring at a significant level, increasing the intensity of droughts and floods and impacting on the lives of hundreds of millions of the poorest people in the world. And so in agroforestry, where we focus on the role of trees in overcoming these problems, we find that these kinds of practices are absolutely essential for adapting farming systems and improving their productivity under the threat of constant drought. Right now, where droughts are becoming more frequent, such as in the eastern part of Kenya, where Better Globe Forestry is focusing its attention, we're working to collaborate with Better Globe to develop systems that are, in fact, productive for farmers, making them more prosperous under these difficult conditions. Why trees? Well, as everyone knows, trees have deep root systems, and they're much more adapted to climate effects, particularly drought and flooding, than any kind of annual crop such as maize or other food crops that farmers are growing. And so to the extent that trees can be adapted to and integrated into farming systems, these are commodities that farmers can grow as assets for their family, as a savings account, and as a means of increasing their income over time, as an added source of family income and wealth. With the farmers that we're working with in eastern Kenya, that's quite evident. Farmers plant these trees as intercrops with their food crops, such as maize. But they prune them so that the trees do not affect the productivity of the crops, and they get a second crop, a tree crop, a wood crop, that can be, in addition to their annual crops, a means of increasing their livelihoods. It's often hard for us to imagine the kind of life of a farm family that's earning less than $1 a day in income. In fact, it's such a different world that it's very, very difficult for most people to even comprehend the kinds of difficulties and challenges and frustrations and serious problems that these families face every day. Your average smallholder farm family in the drylands of Kenya may only have access to 1 or 2 hectares of land in which they have to try to grow their annual food supply for the year. But in the drylands, we've found that growing annual crops, which is their major way of achieving food security, is extremely risky. And it's sad to say that in many parts of eastern Kenya, where Better Globe Forestry is working, farmers may plant 3 crops of maize in 3 years and still only harvest once out of 3 years. with 2 crop disasters in the other years. So in fact, we're talking about an environment which is extremely risky for farmers, which causes them in many cases to use livestock as their means of establishing some assets and some way of building a cash income by grazing livestock in these dryland systems and then selling them after 1 or 2 years. But livestock itself is a very risky business in the drylands. For one thing, with the increasingly long and intensive droughts that we're experiencing in Kenya, most farm families will tell you that they're losing their livestock, their cattle, their goats, to starvation and lack of water in years when rainfall fails in the wet season. And so whether you're talking crops or you're talking livestock, both are very risky propositions. This is why, in fact, the addition of tree crops to small-scale farming is such a major opportunity to help provide additional sources of short and long-term cash income and an asset, like a bank account, that can be harvested when families have crises like hospitalization, a death in the family, or to provide money for education for the children. Trees can do that because they accumulate wealth over the years. And it's my belief that the building of agroforestry systems in the drylands will be a major way in which we can provide income-generating alternatives that can begin to develop pathways out of desperate poverty for so many families in Kenya.